Call the meeting to order. First item this evening is approval of the agenda. Staff or commissioners, any additions to the agenda?
None from staff.
None from commissioners. Seeing no additions, we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, we need a motion.
Motion to
Good
accept.
idea. I was just rigorously zipping through the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Now do we have any discussion? We should have some rigorous discussion now after that to cover for my lack of. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item 2, the minutes from the meeting of September 10th. Any additions or changes from staff or commissioners?
Sure.
Commissioner Benke.
On page 3, there was a couple of grammatical comments. Third word, excused, probably should be recused, and there was in the Commissioner Workman's comments, there's the word or that should be a word of.
Ms. Dean.
Yep, I've noted those, and also a correction. We referenced Chair Workman. It should be Chair Wolter. Sorry about that.
No worries. Any other changes or suggestions? We don't really take suggestions. So I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. And any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3 is a public hearing for the City of Burnsville proposed zoning ordinance amendment to allow parking on temporary surfaces for special events and construction projects. Ms. Dean.
Good evening, Chair, members of the commission. Periodically, staff evaluates our city code and for the opportunity to make updates. And sometimes it's related to the market, sometimes it's related to items that don't meet current law. Other times it's at the request maybe of city staff or council. So this particular ordinance, it's related to parking on unpaved surfaces. There have been a number of requests or instances recently. We can go further back, but I just wanted to give you a recent snapshot of recent requests that we've received for people to park on temporary surfaces or unpaved surfaces. We do have a city code requirement that specifies you're required to park on hard surfaces such as bituminous concrete pavers. It goes into a little more depth, but that's just in summary. So the types of requests that we've received recently, one was for Buck Hill to hold a concert series. As part of that specific request, as part of their planning and development request, they asked to park on grass surfaces on their property. That was approved through the planning and development, and it's for a 1-year approval. Another request was in relationship to our park property, Black Dog Park. During the soccer season, we do have a hard surfaced location for parking, but because of overlap in schedules for game A to game B, there's overflow and there's parking on unpaved surfaces in those instances. We've also had requests for parking, and we have had parking on what we refer to as our AAA site, which the Economic Development Authority owns within heart of the city. Oftentimes during certain performances, dance competitions, or when people lease out the space for meetings, we've seen overflow within that area. And then most recently for Park Nicollet construction, during the proposed parking deck expansion and new office building, there was a request to park a small portion of construction vehicles on unpaved surfaces. So we are proposing to make some changes to our city code. In summary, this is for short-term parking only on unpaved surfaces, up to a 24-hour period. However, in the draft language, we suggest that it can be extended at the approval of our city engineer. The specific connection would be to a permitted special event, construction project, or programmed park event. The property owner would have to ensure that emergency vehicle circulation can still occur. So we have a specific provision listed for that. And that dust control and erosion control is maintained, and that the site's restored if needed. This is the specific language. I can certainly review that with you. If there's certainly any questions, we can jump back to it. But with that, staff does recommend that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the ordinance as presented. And again, I'm here to answer any questions or provide any clarification to you.
Thank you, Ms. Dean. Commissioners, any questions on this item? Commissioner Workman.
Thank you, Chair Walter. I don't know how to say this eloquently, but if there was a scenario where it was raining the night before and we've got vehicle ruts and things like that, we don't really have wording addressing that specific item. And if it was on private property, that would be up to the property owner, but looking at Black Dog Park or other public spaces, I guess, is there a way to address that without, getting too far down the rabbit hole?
I mean, we could add language, and I'm just kind of going off the fly, that talks about that the owner can prohibit parking. I mean, ultimately, it's up to the owner. We can talk about poor weather or rain events, perhaps. Number 7, I think, captures that the property owner is ultimately responsible for any site restoration, and it does need to remain to a pre-existing condition. So
Yeah.
it gets to that. We can certainly talk about adding, if the commission feels necessary to add some additional language, we'd be open to that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. Commissioner
So, the property owner, if it's city property, it would be the city of Burnsville that would have to restore that?
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
And do they take some sort of escrow payment then during the time of permitting to perhaps, pay for the city's time for the damage that was done to the city property?
That's specifically not referenced in city property. Anything that city-related would be, may come down to the lease itself, or the agreements that we have in place regarding any type of restoration. As far as if it's related to a permit, there would be escrow and there would be an agreement related to that for a building permit or like a grading, something related to a grading permit. And then with special events, we do have a provision within that section of the code that does allow the city to capture some type of security if we feel there could be damage. So I think the only one, we'd have to really look into the details, and that's something that we can perhaps maybe not include in the code, but include in any language for like a park agreement or such.
Any additional questions? Commissioner
A
Workman.
follow-up question for Ms. Dean. So if somebody were to rent a public space at a park, is there wording in that agreement that says if there was damage to any park property that the person renting it would be responsible for reconciling that?
I believe in our park lease language, whether someone's just renting a picnic shelter, there's deposits that are required, and responsibility that comes with renting
Okay.
park facilities.
So I guess to my earlier question, this could maybe fall back into that part. There would be something there to lean on if that were to happen.
I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions, or should we open the public hearing for robust discussion? Okay, well, we are opening the public hearing at 6:39 PM. Anyone interested in speaking? Seeing none. We'll close the public hearing at 6:40 PM. Commissioners, what is your pleasure on this item?
Be happy to make a recommendation.
Commissioner Benke.
I would recommend, the planning commission recommend to the city council approval of the ordinance as presented. I do believe staff has plenty of safety measures in current policies and applications can cover that.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Additional discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of this item, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and that goes to the city council on Tuesday, October 2nd at 5:30 PM.
Correct.
Got it without asking. All right, we are now moving on to item 4, which is a continued discussion on the proposed zoning ordinance amendment to add provisions for business banner signs. Ms. Dean?
Good evening, Chair, Commission. This was previously brought to you, I believe, back in July. Our intern at the time had done some thorough research and provided some potential changes to the code. This initially stemmed from an all-day work session from City Council after there was direction to allow banners on schools, further discussion to open it up to what do we do in our commercial, industrial areas for our businesses, and direction to look at that language and perhaps modify. This was then added to our Planning Commission and Economic Development Commission work plans for 2018. Our intern did provide some code evaluation with our market cities and other cities within the metro. In July, she brought that information forward. Really, one of the biggest things was to remove content and to make the language more flexible. As part of the process, staff thought it would be a good idea to bring this in front of the Chamber of Commerce Public Policy Committee. That was done on August 10th. The committee was in favor of the city being more flexible to remove content. There were also other comments to perhaps streamlining our permitting process so that someone could perhaps apply online and the permit could be issued online. And so it would just be easier and more seamless for people. That's something that we can take a look at from a staffing standpoint and our technology standpoint and how to streamline that. That's something that we definitely have on our radar. But for the specific code language, again, it was be more flexible. We like where you're heading. We also checked in with local sign companies to see do they have specific cities that they go to and their code is just really easy to understand or really easy to apply and really easy to communicate with their customers on. Lakeville was one that popped up twice. We only interviewed 4 people, but Lakeville came out twice and actually took a look at their code, and it's pretty simplified. So that's one thing we did. We asked if most of the requests are for banners on walls or banners on poles, a mix of both. Typical size, 4x8, I think was a common size that was mentioned. So that information is within your packet. I think from a staff standpoint, as this is continuing, I'd like to do a little more research to see what other cities are doing specifically for their sign code. Again, because Lakeville was so simplified, I want to see are there other models that maybe we can look at as well. And from a staff standpoint, within your packet, we did take some time to add some additional refinement of the draft, which I'll summarize in the PowerPoint going forward. So rather than putting the whole red line code in front of you on your PowerPoint, you can certainly refer to it, but in summary, what we've done is tried our best to remove content language, tried our best to include specific sections for freestanding temporary wall signs, temporary wall sign, banners, and temporary freestanding signs. So we removed definitions for condo banners, employment banners, and new business banners. and just created a new category of temporary banner sign and a new definition. We removed a reference to security signs. Just as we're walking through, looking at the code, we felt this was covered under informational signs. And since we're in the code already, let's just eliminate that. It would give people just more opportunity, and we didn't feel there was a need for that. Proposing to remove content related to lease signs and open house signs. So there's a specific section that actually says something to the nature of, you must include the content of the realtor phone number, name, address, and because it's referencing content specifically, we said, we don't care what's on that sign. You just want to put a picture of yourself and your website, that's fine. If you want to put all those details, that's fine too. We don't care. Leasing banners, signs section and related table, we've suggested to remove because again, it would be referenced in the new section of the code. The new section of the code references wall sign maximums versus going to another table. So many tables in this section or this chapter of the code. So we thought we could eliminate one. We eliminate the reference to new business, grand opening, and temporary business signs, again, grouping that into the temporary banner signs or temporary freestanding signs. And we completely remove sections of employment signs and condo banners, again, because we're creating these new sections. That generalizes and simplifies. We did add, again, like I had said before, the temporary freestanding sign definition, temporary banner section, and a new section to allowable and prohibited signs, which are that temporary banner and temporary freestanding sections, which get into more detail about time, location, size, and we can get into those details if you want. As far as next steps, this is scheduled for the October 17th Economic Development Commission meeting. We do have a check-in on the City Council calendar for December 13th. Staff, we do want to take more time to refine what's in front of you. We started modifying the temporary real estate signs, new development signs, and construction signs. These are signs where if you're driving past a new project, it might have a display of a new building, or it might say the contractor's name, blank construction, or it may be something that's for lease or for sale. I think we can work on this. I think we just didn't have enough time to get to it and refine that, but I think we want to, before we bring it back to you, we want to make some changes to those sections. We hope to have this before the Planning Commission ultimately for final draft approval in early 2019. So kind of talked about that. As far as recommendation, we do recommend continued discussion on the draft changes. And again, we can have other check-in points. The ones stated on the timeline are the definite ones, but we can squeeze something in before with the Planning Commission as well prior to 2019. With that, if there's any questions, anything specifically you want me to address, any concerns with the strikeouts or underlined red language in your packets, I'm open.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Dean. I think that I particularly like the research that's been done on the Market Cities policies here, and then also the discussion with sign companies. I thought was a real good value add for this discussion. I know, in my view, I think this is definitely, considering the charge that was given, I think this is making some significant progress. So, commissioners, any questions or discussion?
Just one, sure.
Commissioner Menke?
Ms. Dean, there's a section that's labeled allowable and prohibited signs.
Yes.
It lists allowable.
Yes, it
and
would.
it lists prohibited. It doesn't cover what's in between. All I'm suggesting is that whatever isn't covered in one or the other needs to be excluded by one or the other. That's my only observation.
Okay,
I mean, it just basically creates this.
Yeah.
It just cleans it up for you guys. So,
okay. That makes sense.
Commissioner Timmer?
One of the concerns that I have is in the definitions section, temporary freestanding sign and temporary banner sign. Both of those provide examples of commercial or non-commercial speech. Both of those, the 4 examples provided are all commercial speech. But my main concern is that by providing examples, we're walking the fine line and infringing on what people can put on their signs. And so I would rather see no examples provided than specific examples provided in the definition.
That's a great comment because we're trying to get away from the content references and to eliminate that altogether. I'll have to see, you know, what do other cities do? I think might be able to lean on that and get creative with our other staff on board and see if we can come up with some suggestions. That's a good one.
Thanks.
Commissioner Workman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a quick clarification point based on some things that I've seen in Burnsville. And I apologize if this is in here already, but are we addressing the flags that I'm starting to see more of? There's kind of those big swooping rounded flags. I think there was an apartment complex in town that was using them for a while. And then they were removed and they wrapped the chain link fence kind of near here. I can't remember the name of it. But is that in the same realm as what we're discussing here?
The flags that have a pole and kind of a
Yeah, like a Nike
half
swoosh.
teardrop shape or something. Those are technically prohibited by code. I believe they're classified as bannerets or flags within our code, so that it would not fall under the specific category. We really wanted to talk about really the wall sign banner opportunities and really didn't get into some of those other temporary type signs.
Okay. Then I won't spend any more time on that. And then for the temporary freestanding signs, I'm trying to envision what the what our preference is for the temporary freestanding signs in the red line under the allowable and not allowable. Are we talking about sandwich board signs? Or are we talking about, I think there's one on Cliff Road right now and it's pole constructed all around that sits out on their lawn.
So sandwich board signs would not be covered under this. They do have their own category of being allowed. As far as temporary freestanding signs, I almost think of it as like a commercial for lease sign almost. They're typically 4x8. They're on post. They're typically leasing a property or selling property, but it could be, but it would fall under this category instead.
Those wooden ones, okay. Is that kind of where, as far as out as we want to go, or, I know this is an ongoing item, maybe I can snap a photo of it and send it, because it actually looks kind of nice, but it's not what you're talking about.
Okay.
And I don't think it's for a lease sign, it might be for a sale or something like that. If you drive down Cliff, almost till you get to 35, you'll see it. I don't want to get anybody in trouble right now by talking about that, but I'm just, in reading this, I was trying to envision where it looks good and where it doesn't, and that, I guess, in my opinion, seemed like it would be okay, but if the wooden signs is what we're shooting for, then that's just good to understand that, so.
And I'm certainly not familiar with the particular sign. I can, at the next planning commission meeting where this is discussed, I can certainly provide an example of that if
Yeah.
you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional comments? Commissioner Benke?
Just from what Commissioner Workman talked about, is a leasing sign considered temporary or permanent? Thank you, okay.
Yeah.
I think I know the answer to my question, but anyway.
So that's something we want to take a closer look at because our current language talks about after construction of the project. There's other areas where it talks about after 90% leased. Other areas where it's like really like gray and so I think from a staff standpoint, we want to get a better handle on what's in there, how can we simplify, how can it be easier for our realtors to follow, our developers to follow, our property owners to follow, because it kind of jumps around a lot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can find a building with a real nice monument out front, and right next to it, there's a leasing sign that probably is 4 years old. You're well aware, I know. But anyway, I was just, and that isn't my concern about whether it should or should not be there. It's just that if we're getting into this much work on our sign ordinance, is there a better way for it to be managed?
Additional comments from Ms. Teen?
I have a question.
Commissioner Henderson?
Regarding the 90 days, is that 90 consecutive days, or can they split it up into month increments, or, I mean, is that specified somewhere on the permit, or does it need to be specified?
That's a really great question too. That was, and I should have referenced this in my report and, or within the red line. That's one area where I do want to get a better handle on what are we doing today? What is our department that permits the signs? What are they seeing? What are they hearing? What are other cities doing? Because the 90 days is almost a placeholder for now. I don't think we have that pinned down from us. We don't feel comfortable from a staff standpoint, but thank you for highlighting that. I will definitely make a note, and our intent was to make some changes to that section too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that update. Is that a helpful discussion?
It is.
We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you,
And
Chair.
as you indicated, there's a number of other touch points before we see this again, so appreciate the work on that and the update. No public hearing on this because it's just a discussion item.
We need no motion either.
No motion, no, but thank you for the reminder.
You forgot last.
Yeah, I know, I've got a habit of forgetting motions lately. With that, I think we're on item 5, updates. Anything from staff?
From a staff standpoint, at the last September 10th meeting, the items that moved forward to city council stayed on the consent agenda. So no changes there. As far as the next meeting, it's October 8th, a pretty full agenda. You can pass that along. I do also want to remind everyone that the volunteer recognition is coming up. Please RSVP by the 26th of September. You should have received an email about that.
Appreciate the reminder on that.
That's all I have.
Anything from commissioners? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.